So I just was reviewing right now, some reactivity, can growl at people sometimes.
Yeah, and the problem is it's not like, it's very inconsistent. So like some days we'll go for a walk and he's pretty good, and then like today I just walked in before we came here and he was a nightmare. Like barking at people, just, and it's not like, oh, he always barks at men or anything like that. It's just random. Sometimes someone will be minding their business and he'll just freak out, and it's not like any distinguishing thing about them. Our main concern is kids. We definitely can't let him just run around with toddlers, and we want to have kids, so that's like the main thing.
He's never had like an incident, but he growls at them a lot.
Okay.
And then one time we had her cousin's kids were visiting, and they were supposed to be in a room, and they were supposed to be in bed, and one of the kids gets up in the middle of the night and opens the door. And at that point, we had Chief off leash in our house, and he ran into the room and was kind of unsupervised with them for maybe 5 seconds.
Like while we're running in after him.
And the kid was scared and ran back to the bed, and he just he stayed just inside the entrance barking. So like
he had the opportunity to like attack him if he wanted to, and he didn't. But was just growling at the kid like in the corner. But you know, we don't want to rely on that he's not going to attack, because it was scary.
So I wouldn't pet him right now.
Oh yeah? Okay.
Because he's very anxious.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you do here is you just move him off. And what I'm gonna have you do is you're gonna pull up on your leash, and you're gonna press down on his butt, but you're not gonna say anything, you're gonna relax, okay? Every time he stands up and or lays down, you're gonna pull up and then relax the moment he puts that butt down, okay? You're not gonna say anything. Depending on how bad this whining is, you may also pull up as well to kind of disrupt that, and we'll see what that does for him. So when you were touching him, one, it's just kind of habit for most people, right?
Yeah.
When the dog comes by and you just kind of just pet them. And right there, he was seeking comfort. Up again. And then now relax. There you go. And I'll explain why we're doing this in a moment. Is he's going, Mom, I'm anxious, right? And your intention is to comfort him, so he's not anxious. But petting is a reinforcer. So petting says, be anxious. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So here, what we're doing is giving him, so it looks like we're telling him to sit, so to speak, but we're not. You're actually telling him to relax.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so when I said pull up and push down, and you're using physical to get him to go in a more relaxed position, we should start to see him just less and less anxious, start to quiet down a bit more, and not try to move so much, okay? So the reason why I'm not letting him lay down either is because I know if we let him lay down, he's gonna also cry or whine. So I'm trying to challenge him as much as possible, because for him to sit up like this takes effort on his part, okay? That's why he keeps trying to lay down. Now, once we start to feel him relax more, then we would start, okay, I'm gonna ease the pressure, and then you can just lay down because you're in a more relaxed state, okay? So, and we'll see how he does, because I can see him sliding away. Okay, so we got growling in kids, we got, he had an opportunity, but he didn't, just say barking in the threshold, and I'll press down with your, there you go, and then you would relax, very good. And then random barking on a walk if you see someone.
And like lunge, today it happened to be people, but normally like if I'm walking down the street and there's someone with a dog, like it's always gonna be a thing where he's trying to lunge. Like we could never let him kind of sniff another dog on leash. It's not always, sometimes it's an angry bark, sometimes it's just kind of like lunging, kind of want to play with that dog. But obviously I just keep my distance. And then we were taking him to the dog park like every day. And honestly, I think within the last month, it just got stressful because he plays with dogs normally really well, but sometimes in the dog park it was like they'd be playing and then just, you know, a second and then it would turn into a thing, and I just didn't feel comfortable with him getting bigger, being able to like break it up. So I kind of stopped. I know you take him sometimes, but he does play with.
It's also like, not that he's an angel or anything else like that, but with the dog park, you know, sometimes people aren't responsive to their dogs, so it's like we have to break. So it just kind of like, and now that he's older,
the walks are like a good exercise.
The walk,
Yeah.
But he does play really well. My dad has 2 English Cocker Spaniels, so like a lot smaller than him, and they've never had any incidents. They run around and have a great time. We also have, it's a lab mix. His brother has a lab mix, and they play really well. Then there's a Bernedoodle. Like
And he plays well with Gordy too, who's just a straight pit bull.
Yeah, so basically any of like family dogs, if we're at my dad's house or at his parents' house in the backyard, never any incidents with any of that. So that's good. My dad has watched him for a full long weekends if we're out of town, and has never had any issues with him and his dogs. So I don't know what that means. It's just inconsistent.
Yeah, so not uncommon for a dog to be reactive on leash, but for the most part off leash be social. So we have two main responses to stress, fight or flight, and then there's avoidance submission. Okay, the key to would be fight or flight. So if you're on a walk and he's on that leash, you remove one option, right? So that's the least fight response, which is your reactivity. That's anything confrontational or defensive is considered fight response. So that's because I get that a lot with my clients. Like, off-leash dog's terrible. Off-leash, like, most social, like, most submissive angel. Yeah, it's super common. But like you said, sometimes you can tell, like, it's where it's like a defensive bark, and other times where it's just like, I want to play with that dog. Okay. Now, even though it can be, I want to play with that dog, even those kind of barks or situational reactivity can still escalate to a fight because of frustration is where it's coming from. So, like, a client's dog, it could be super social and they're barking because they want to play, and then right when they get to the other dog, they'll snap at them. And the owner's like, oh my God, my dog was being aggressive. I'm like, no, like, it's all that frustration up until your dog got to that dog. And then it's dogs express emotions through their mouths. They lick, they pant, they salivate, they nip, they bite, they growl, they bare teeth. They're very much mouth-based, right? So they're so frustrated, by the time they get to the thing that they're frustrated about, they have to release the frustration, and it looks like a bite, okay? So it doesn't mean the dog's aggressive, it just means in that moment they were so frustrated they had to go somewhere, okay? So when you talk about the dog park, and then every now and then there'd be an instance where maybe a dog nipped him too hard, or maybe barreled into him, and he's like, right, and then it escalates into a scuffle. Yeah. It's not uncommon. Dogs regulate themselves, whereas humans, we're regulated by laws and judges and jails and laws and all that stuff, right? So, like, if there's threat, we're taught to not really confront it, but instead call 911, right? But in the dog world, there's no 911, right? It's like, okay, you're pissing me off, or you're disrespecting my personal space. I'm gonna nip and bite you, okay? So it doesn't make a dog aggressive. That just says that the dog has boundaries, and that dog is more likely to use physicality, just like with humans. Right. There's some people that, we can have a conversation and we can resolve conflict simply through words. And there's other people who jump straight to like physicality or challenge, right? It's the same thing for dogs, okay? So all that makes sense, and you're right, like, well, trying to split up the dog fight at this size and everything like that becomes more dangerous. Yeah. So, do you know what your dog's issue is? Like, where all these things are coming from?
No, because we've talked about that. So we got him as a puppy.
Yes, 3 months old.
So he hasn't had like any, well, I guess he was attacked one time by a dog, but like her cousin's dog had a bee sting, and Chief went to like.
He's a pretty aggressive dog too.
And yeah, that dog is probably, and he.
There's not a lot of any daycares, so we can't. That was 6 months old.
But that's the only issue.
And I mean, he was attacked. It was scary for us, but it wasn't like we didn't go to the vet or anything. I don't even think, did he draw blood?
Very small.
So it wasn't like, it was more of like the dog was saying like, get out of my space.
Sure.
But other than that, yeah, we got him at 3 months from a rescue, and we
You're doing a great job, by the way.
I don't think he wants to.
No, you're doing a great job.
We got him. The only thing I can think of is they were pretty sure that they weren't like taking great care of him in the rescue. Like, I don't think he ever went outside, and we've since heard pretty bad things about the rescue, unfortunately. So for the first 3 months, like, I'm pretty sure he was born there because they know his exact birthday. So
he was born in the shelter, and then
so maybe neglect, but nothing like bad.
He didn't know what grass was the first time we took him on. So
which grass? This one, the slope, or the?
And then, what was I gonna say? Oh, so the first night that we got him, we wanted to crate train him. So we were, going to tell us crate train. So we were trying to. We're in an apartment though, and so we bring him home. We try to, and it was just like it was not happening, because I think he had known.
He barked like a metronome every 2 seconds.
Interesting.
For about 10 minutes.
We tried to like go into our bedroom and like we had him in the living room just so that.
Didn't talk, so he couldn't even hear us, and just for 10 minutes straight. It was
So basically we're kind of like, we can't do this to our neighbors. So, and I will say like, so it's bad that we haven't crate trained him, but he like never has accidents, he's never chewed anything, he sleeps in bed with us. But it hasn't really been a concern because he hasn't caused any issues where we've had to crate him.
Yeah.
But that was one thing where I was like, oh, I wonder if you never were let out of your crate, and that's why this was not gonna, like, this didn't happen. And then I don't think we really tried it again.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for dogs, that's actually not something they really process because they don't have a sense of time.
Yeah.
So like, regardless, let's say, you know, with the rescue, like there was like, they just didn't take them out and stuff. Like I've had other similar situations with other clients where they got a dog from someone who like their dog was carried in the basement the entire time. They had them, you know, and the dog's fine in the crate.
Yeah.
It's really just like, you see how much right now, like how much you're just having to address them. You're doing great. That's part of the issue with not wanting to be in the crate.
Yeah.
Is that he doesn't, like just him sitting still right here is an issue. Okay? And then so since he can't sit still and you put him in a crate, well, he only has so much space, now you're gonna get bark, 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 bark. Okay, so that we would just correct. So when we get, because the most common thing, and not to discredit your story, but the most common thing I hear with my behavior cases or whatever, dogs like this dog was abused. It's the most common thing that we hear. And I go, well, how do you know? They're like, well, just because the dog doesn't like brooms. I'm like, but a dog doesn't know what a broom is. So, you know, if you don't know what something is, aren't you sometimes scared of it, right?
Yeah.
But as a human, we're like, obviously we've been around for years at this age.
Yeah.
So we're like aware, that's a car, that's a truck, that's a train, that's an airplane, that's a CTA bus, right? We know this stuff. So it doesn't scare us. But for dogs, like there's some dogs who've never seen a train in their life, and we're not abused by a train, and when they see it, they're scared of it, right? It's because they don't know what it is. So when we see the stuff, it's always, we don't treat them any differently. I had a client whose Dobie had stab wounds, and you would think like he was like, oh, I don't want this dog to be aggressive or anything like that. But she was the sweetest dog, and it was very clear she had stab wounds, right? She also had BB gun wounds, and so we know like there was some abuse there, physical abuse. Sweetest dog, didn't have any issues.
Yeah.
He was afraid though, because he had rescued her. Right away, he contacted me. He's like, hey Jesse, I want to make sure that there's no issues, so I'm just jumping into this. And I was like, all right, well, like just so what it is a lot of this is genetics, okay? And so we have a stable dog. So a trainer wants to, if you have a stable dog in an unstable environment, you get an unstable dog. You take that dog out and you put them in a stable environment, they go back to stability. Because that's who they are at core. An unstable dog would be more unstable, but even in a stable environment, if they don't know how to handle it, would still be unstable. Okay? So, and I get clients who get puppies from breeders and do things by the book, positive reinforcement, exposure, social, right? And the dog still has issues. And they go, Jesse, this dog was never abused. We know this. We've had this dog forever, but for a responsible breeder, this and that. But this dog still has issues. I go, yeah, it's just genetics. So the good thing is, much of this can always be resolved. It's just typically not the way that people think. Okay. So your dog's issue is nervousness and overstimulation, potentially anxiety. Okay. All that whining here is technically anxiety, but can also be overstimulation. And sometimes overstimulation and anxiety can look the same because it's the dog's inability to settle. Okay? So like right now he's in a foreign environment, he's never been here before, there's nothing going on. So why do we have this? Right? So it's either he's anxious because he's in an unfamiliar environment, which is a stress response, so that's okay, I get it. Or it's overstimulation. We're telling him, sit put, don't move. And he's going, but I want to, I don't want to sit here, I want to go over here, I want to go over there, I want to smell that, I want to do this, right? So then it comes out as overstimulation, whining, and or anxiety, okay? The reason why I know it's nervousness is because of how you described his reactivity. You said like it could be something sudden, right? And then he just blows up.
Yeah.
And we know with dogs, it's going to be a thing. So, and when you said, when the child was like, something happened and he kind of just charged in, right? It was like a sudden thing. but he didn't go full blown in because he's not really, in my book, aggressive. He's not willing to go that last step, but he's trying to still confront it, but it was a response to something. Okay, so anxiety, nervousness, and fear look similar, but the defining features are fear always wants to stay back, okay, and they don't let it go. They'll just keep going, keep going, and do not shut up, okay? If you move back, they move forward. You move in, they move backwards, okay? But they always want to keep that distance. They don't want to close it. Anxious energy wants to keep moving. They keep pacing, they're salivating, eyes look really big, lots of panting, but they're unable to like relax. So they'll like lay down, they'll get up, walk over here, lay down, get up, over there, sit down, get up, walk around, go over here, lay down. So all these movements. Nervousness will settle, but then when there's a sudden change, they react. Okay, so like if like I have a bunch of nervous cases, so like one of them, you know, if you're sitting down watching a football game, dog's fine, and all of a sudden everybody stands up and claps, dog blows up. Okay, and then everybody relaxes, dog settles. 10 minutes later, somebody gets up to go to the bathroom, dog blows up, because it's calmness and then sudden change, and that's what the dog triggers too. Okay, yours, in my opinion, would be a lower level of nervous reactivity, okay? Because like right now, like when I came in and stuff, and how I'm moving, I'm watching for him, and he does not care about me at the moment at all. If anything, when I first came in, he wanted to come and say hi.
Yeah, he's very friendly. Like you know, it's obviously what you've heard with every COVID dog. Like we didn't really have people in our apartment like consistently until this April. But we have people over, and he's totally fine. He's not, I don't think he's ever been aggressive. He jumps on people, but we've kind of corrected that with like the spray bottle. So now he hasn't, and then that did not take him long. And he was like,
he's very smart, which is some of the frustration, because like, so we took him to initially anything is possible or whatever, and he would learn always the fastest out of anyone. Like if he's super food motivated, so we knew he was smart, and and he's never, so he learns things quickly.
He's friendly with people, and the last thing I don't know if this matters, he's very good. Like we'll go out for like a night, 8 hours, he's fine. We have a dog camera, so we'll kind of, when we first started going out, like post-vaccine, he would bark a little bit, and then we'd get in our elevator, and we'd look at our dog camera, and he was done. And then we'll check it every once in a while. He's fine, he sleeps the whole time. We get home, let him out, no accidents, no chewing. So it's weird. A lot of things that you normally worry about with a dog, like, that's fine. So he doesn't have like separation anxiety in that like traditional way. I just wanted to mention that because I think it's strange.
And I think you're right. I think we also, maybe we mentioned, maybe we didn't. So we have a dog run where he goes to the bathroom a lot of times. And yeah, like you said, and then there'll be other aggressive dogs, small dogs, whatever. There's some dogs that just don't like him. And we just go to the side, he sits and he's fine.
Not in the enclosure, like
not in the enclosure, but like kind of waiting for the people to leave. Sorry. Here we go. And he won't growl first, but when other dogs growl at him, he'll bark at them, and he will try and kind of go towards them. And I can't get him to back, even if I have a try just to redirect him to me to like kind of calm him down. Like like I have like a look means like look at me kind of thing.
Sure. What's your favorite thing to eat?
His?
Yours.
I like chicken wings.
Chicken. Let's say you're outside and someone's talking shit to you. And she's like, hey, here.
Yeah.
Do you understand that?
Yeah,
no, and I'm not trying to,
I would, to contextualize more with what you're saying, what you're saying, that makes
sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I'm going to explain this more. Because with positive only, and I'm not against positive, by the way. We use positive all the time. We have a puppy here for a 2-week board and train. She's 9 weeks now. It's all food. But when we're dealing with this stuff, I never understood that concept. Even when I first started training, because I was like, man, if someone's talking shit to me, and then like you're like, hey, I'm like, I don't really care about that. I really like brownies, but I don't want that right now.
That's funny.
It's where that kind of that's what that is.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because if that dog is barking and he's responding because that dog's putting out a threat, technically speaking, okay? And like let's say the dog barked because it's friendly. Dogs are primal, so like police officers are taught to always assume they're walking into a bad situation, okay? Because if it's just a routine traffic stop, and you may see these videos on YouTube or like Cops the Show, where it's routine traffic stop and all of a sudden, boom, 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 there's gunfire, right? So if the officer is not in anticipation of, they get caught off guard, that's potentially their life, right? That's where dogs reside.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay? So even if that dog barks in terms of like, I want to play, he's like, one, because he's a nervous dog, right? Two, again, he can't run away, he has no flight response. Instinct says survival. So I'm going to go into confrontation, okay? And if he had the opportunity to, doesn't mean he will. He can be bluff, and I can get a lot of dogs to bluff. But it's still, I mean, people do the same thing too. They act big and tough, and then really they're not.
Yeah.
Right? So when we deal with the reactivity stuff, and you mentioned earlier, you know, it's a really smart dog. Intelligence and behavior are two different things. So think of obedience as education, sit, stay, come, math, English, science. Think of behavior as morality. Don't jump, don't bark, don't bite, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat.
Yeah.
So if someone could be a genius in math and physics, but be a terrible person, and someone can be not the brightest person, but be like a really, really good person, right? They don't coincide or overlap. But for dogs, it's a very common thing that people, you know, I've had, or way when I answer my own phone, when people are like, hey Jesse, my dog's aggressive, they need to learn how to sit. Like literally this was something somebody told me. And I was like, what does the sit have to do with the aggression? They're like, well, if the dog's sitting, the dog can't bite the person. I'm like, but what if the dog cares about biting the person more than they care about the sit?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So they're like, good, that's a good point. So when we teach obedience using food and stuff, it doesn't help anything because it's just a skill set. It's a mechanical response. Sit, put your butt down. But if there's something more important to him or more stressful, like another dog or threat, where he perceives as threat, sit goes out the window, right? Or the reward or the incentive to behave well goes out the window because he's like, this is instinctual, this is I need to survive and I need to defend myself, so on and so forth. Plus you empower him as well. You give him something to protect, you know? So that's a big part of also where reactivity comes from as well, is if the dog feels that they're kind of like, I don't want to say in charge, but like kind of heading the household, technically the safety of the household is on them.
Interesting.
Right? So if we have mom, dad, child, and an ill-intended person came into the home, who would we expect to protect the child? Mom and dad, right? We wouldn't expect the child to be old enough to defend themselves. So for the dog, they don't really have that, even for puppies. In their world, there's always a dominant energy. Dominance is very fluid. Dominance isn't a concrete thing where one dog rules everything. So like right now, I would be technically dominant energy because I have insight and knowledge that you need, right? But then if like a fire broke out and a firefighter came in and he was like, hey, everybody evacuate, go this way, he would then be dominant energy because he is now controlling the situation, you know? So dominance is very fluid, it's happening all the time. If you ever have like go out with friends and there's like maybe 6 of you, and you're having a conversation and you see where everybody's attention just shifts from one person to another, that's dominance kind of being exchanged because they're heading the conversation and it's switching between everybody, okay? So when people think of dominance, they usually think force or aggression or like, you know, being big and tough. It's all about confidence and it's about control within the situation or like leading the situation. It's not really what people usually think of it at first, okay? So there always has to be dominant energy. So if you're coming in and you're an authority to your dog, and you're saying, I disagree with your whining, I disagree with you trying to get up 20 times, at this point 20,000 times, I disagree with your reactivity and stuff, that means you're dominant energy, because you're leading that. So I'm the oldest of 4 children. I could not discipline my brothers or sister. I did not have that authority. I tried once, and I got spanked for it, right? So my mom was like, that is not on you, that is us. We're gonna discipline you for thinking that, right? But I had no power. That was authority, that's dominance. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So how does this apply here? So we do e-collar, prong collar, which I'm assuming you guys read. I do primarily e-collar. Prong collar is if we need it, okay? So the reason why we do remote collar is because right off the bat you get off-leash control. It's the only tool in my opinion that guarantees you off-leash control, because as soon as you take off your leash, you no longer have connection.
Yep.
If you're using food and your dog is doing something more rewarding or there's something more stressful, food goes out the window. If you're doing prong collar, gentle lead, or harness, whatever, again, you take off the leash, you don't have contact. Remote collar, you always have contact up to a mile, depending on the collar you get. Obviously, for the average family pet, they don't go that far.
Yeah.
But the collars that we use have that range. So, the next thing is dogs are, of course, physical animals. So if he did something to another dog and they did not, like right there. Did you see what just happened? Okay, right on cue. Okay, is right there. You're telling him to sit, and then his mouth looked around. Okay, what do you think that intention was?
Scare me off.
Correct.
Down with
The
the
threat,
yeah.
right? He's like, I might nip you because I'm getting tired of you putting me in this sitting position, right? That's physicality. He just gave you threat of physicality. So dogs nip and bite each other. That's how they communicate. They nip and bite their puppies as young as 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, but when we get a 2-month-old puppy, we don't do physicality. We're taught that that's wrong. We're taught that's abuse. We do shake the can of pennies. We do water spray bottle, time out in the kennel, turn your back, yelp, right? And when I was training puppies, a lot of my owners were like, Jesse, we've done 2 puppy programs, nothing works. And it's usually some of that stuff, right? And I go, yeah, because dogs don't do that to their puppies.
Interesting, yeah.
Right? I mean, you can go on YouTube and find videos of this.
Yeah.
So are dogs abusing their puppies? Are we going to call, was it CPS or CFS, right, on the dogs because they're nipping their puppies? Right. So I understand and I agree that, physicality done incorrectly is not good. But that's why I'm here, okay? So I always tell my clients, I'm like, yes, your puppy's 2 months old, but yes, you should still physically correct them. Here's how to do so. Otherwise, we end up with stuff like this. Because dogs lose themselves because they're grown, they're being raised without what they're needing, which is physicality.
It makes a ton of sense, because I feel like this all, I feel like this all started.
And then relax. You got it. Good.
Because he had like no issues until he was like 8 months old, I want to say, so that all totally makes sense.
Right. So here, and a lot of things, what you're going to do is, and then there you go, and then relax. Good. Now when you're pressing down on him, if you feel like you're working out a bit, ease up and just keep it constant, but still just kind of increasing pressure, okay? Because then if he's starting to get because he's getting frustrated, right? And then we can get frustrated, and then all of a sudden we get a bigger interaction. So here, and you're correct, because dogs have strength forward and backwards, they don't have strength sideways. Is I'll turn their hips in like you are, right? Like that. And then like that. So that gives you the most leverage to try to control him.
No, Chief.
There you go, and then relax. Good. Okay. You see how hard of a time he's having here, right? Do something real quick.
You're doing great with your, actually you're doing pretty great with your audition.
With his what?
With his audition.
Oh, audition.
I mean, like, wouldn't it be weird if he was on his best behavior
Yeah,
ever?
that's true.
Okay. He's good with people all the way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and loop him here. This is just a slip leash. And you're gonna press, you see that little brown notch right there, just above your hand? You're gonna slide that down. And you're gonna move that leash up here.
To here?
Yeah, so you move my leash up to the top of his neck, above right here. Just under his throat.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's gonna move up because it got stuck under his collar there.
There we go.
Yes, hi, there we go. Good, I'm gonna take him for a second. Okay. All right. Good. So with the slip leash, I have more what I call negative pressure. So negative in the dog training world technically means subtraction. In this case, I'm using it as uncomfortable. Okay. So when a dog nips or bites another dog, there's going to be a level of discomfort there. So we call that pressure, okay? So here, everything that you're doing, you're using pressure. You're using physical pressure and leash pressure. The problem is, because the leash is a blunt surface, there's no real negative to it. Whereas here, there's some constricting tension, okay? So if you looked at how much I was doing, I wasn't doing very much, but he was resisting a lot, right? So I just kept it subtle, but I kept increasing it, and then he didn't want to do it for me because we don't have trust, okay? So then when he whipped around and he turned to face me because he wants to keep eyes on the person he doesn't know, and he put his butt down, I went ahead and just released the tension. Because I go, all right, that's fine. If you don't want to sit here where I wanted you, or relax here, and you want to do this, fine, okay? And I released that pressure. So right there he goes, okay. He's like, I felt this, I didn't like it. And then as soon as I did this, Jesse let it go. Okay, now that right there builds trust. Okay, because I was doing something, he didn't trust me, he didn't want to do it, but once he gave me something and let it go, now I'm completely relaxed.
That's amazing.
Okay, but it's because the reason why this is happening more quickly here is because of the tool that I'm using, which is why I grabbed it, and two, because he doesn't know me. Okay, so it throws things off for the dog. So I use that really to my advantage. So remote collar gets a bad rap. People usually refer to it as like the shock collar, right? That term comes from two places. One, it's the positive only front, trying to discourage people from using the tool. You're shocking your dog, you're hurting your dog, you're torturing your dog, so on and so forth. And it also comes back from when they first came out, e-collars weren't as refined as they are now. And they had only like 5 settings. They only had 5 settings. Ours have 127 settings.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so 5 and 127 are the same, but we have 122 more divisions.
Yeah.
So right there, when I said 127, did you think 127 more or 122 more?
Because
I figured it was just in that in between.
More range. Yeah. Because most people usually think more.
I was thinking just like little incremental, so you're not going like 0 to 60.
Exactly, right. So obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you would expect those jumps to be much bigger, much harsher, and that is true. So your dog could be yelping at 4, but not listening at 3, so you were stuck.
Yeah.
Okay, whereas now we got 60, 40, 50, 51, 49, right? You can really fine tune it to the dog, to the situation, all that stuff. So e-collar technology actually is applied to people. Have you guys ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist?
Physical therapist,
Have you ever had the stim?
Yes,
that's an e-collar. Okay, so it's a muscle contraction.
Oh.
It's for people, it stimulates your muscles and moves it without you.
Yeah.
Correct. So they use it a lot in sports rehabilitation therapy. They use it to break up scar tissue on muscles. They use it to rebuild strength for people who like maybe they broke their arm, they haven't used it in a really long time, and we have to get used to using those muscles again. That's another means of using it. So it's used in the medical world or medicinal world, all over the place, okay? It's the same technology. But you wouldn't think that because it's called a shock collar. You know, that's why I said it's to deter people, okay? That's why I'm here. So, because if it was that, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be around if it was actually electrocuting dogs. So here, the e-collar is our means of physicality at the press of a button. I like to refer to it as a bite on the button, okay? So, when we do remote collar, people typically think we're gonna go and find the problem or make there be a problem and then like punish the dog, right? That is incorrect. It is an approach, but it's not the first approach, okay? First approach is always teach the dog structure in an indirect fashion, and then we see what does it fix, okay? So the first thing we always teach is the heel exercise, which is walking on a leash, okay? My style of heel is very strict. I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps, I take 1 step, they take 1 step. When I stop, they automatically sit, and I would have a completely slack leash, okay? When you have that level of focus, a lot of issues go away, okay? Primarily reactivity, okay? That's why we always teach heel. It sounds like, wow, like really? That like he has to walk like that, focus to you? Yes. That sounds like it's gonna be difficult, No. We get this done every class with our clients within about 15 minutes, okay? It's common sense. We've broken it down to where we can just tell you what to do. We're there with you if you're doing it in person, and we coach you through it because you're the one that's got to work with the dog, okay? We already know how to train dogs, so don't matter to us.
Yeah.
And then you go and you practice. We see you a week later. What do we see? Oh, Jesse, the reactivity, like 60% better, 80% better. You're my feedback, and that's what dictates how we move forward, okay? So with your case, when it comes to leash reactivity, he has to have a frame of reference, which is why we teach the heel, okay? Any trainer that knows what they're doing almost always will teach that first before going into anything else, okay? So when a dog feels e-collar, they typically want to move, most likely move away, okay? There's flight response. So here, when they feel the e-collar and they want to move, we use the heel, which is a moving behavior, walking with the dog, so that when he feels the collar, he can still move in response. We're just teaching him how to do it, okay? So he gets that means of expressing that behavior, okay? Plus, walking our dog is typically something that most people do 3 times a day in the city of Chicago, because we got to take our dogs out to go potty, right? So it's something that we get to practice 3 times a day, 7 days a week. So it keeps structure in the dog's life. This isn't something of like, we're going to train him and then you do nothing and you're fine. This is yes, it's training, but it's also like a lifestyle, okay? But in the beginning, it's more work because obviously you have to change things. But once you've established your foundation, you've made your progress, it's just keeping it. So it's like me, if I want to get in shape and I go to the gym, right? It's not like I get in shape and I'm like, great, I'm done. And I go and just do whatever I want. Now I have to maintain that shape, right? Right now I'm a circle. I'm working on it. So does this all make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So when it comes to his nervousness, well, how does this help his nervousness, right? So one thing is, I cannot make your dog an unnervous dog. That is just who he is, okay? But we can help him handle the nervousness better, okay? So when so e-collar is a stressor, nervousness is a stress response, okay? So I expect to see him get more nervous when we start the training. It's normal, okay? We work him through it. So then he goes under stress, we help guide him through it, he learns how it turns on, he learns how it turns off, his nervousness kicks in, we work him through it, I work you through it. So then he learns like, oh, like, you know, I got really stressed out about that and I wanted to do this, but I couldn't, and I had to do what they wanted me to do, but everything's actually fine. Is it helps him realize there's not that much to actually be nervous about, okay? So if it's like with people, if we have an issue, we don't confront it, you continue to run from it, right? Like let's say the first time I had to break up with a girlfriend, right? Like trying to avoid it. Well, I would never learn how to break up with a person or in a relationship.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Same thing for the dog. But we have to do it in a way they understand, which is the complicated part, okay? It's easy because we do this all the time, but it's complicated because it's typically counterintuitive to how a person would think. Because our natural instinct when we see our dog become nervous or go into stress is to release pressure, okay? And by releasing pressure, we actually feed into him, okay? And then he learns that nervous response will stop what he doesn't want. We have to work him through that, okay? That's how we build confidence. And actually on my, I don't know if you guys follow us on Instagram, we just posted a video, it's about 3 posts back, it's called Building Confidence with E-Collar. This is a shutdown dog. They've had the dog for years. They started doing e-collar training and we started to see shutdown again. Okay, they thought they had made all this progress, and they did make progress, but they never showed the dog how to handle stress. So shutdown was still his thing. Okay, so we worked him through that, and by the end of class, he was went from like being like this to being nice and upright and more confident through pressure. But the whole time they're like, we thought that, you know, this would make him worse. Like, well, no. It's like with the personal trainer, you know, if you ever had one, right? Where it's like you think like, well, I can't do this, and like, nope, you're giving me 5 more reps, right? And you do it, and they're like, yeah, right? You're like, holy crap, I didn't think I was gonna be able to do that. And you feel more confident, you feel confident, you feel better, right? You feel motivated. Similar for the dog. So we see, what does the pressure resolve? So you have the healing exercise, I give you your homework, you go, you do your homework, and then you come back week 2, and then you give me feedback, okay? And you know, you might say, Jesse, is great, like reactivities, you dropped down a lot, but we had a moment where he turned the corner and there was a dog and he blew up. I go, makes sense, because it's such a like sudden or extreme situation. So reactivity is a spectrum. Typically human reactivity goes away first. Reactivity towards calm dogs would be the second thing. Other reactive dogs or excited energy is typically in the middle. Reactivity towards other reactive dogs, and then sudden run-ins or surprise run-ins with dogs are end of spectrum. Okay, and those take the longest. So the dog is lunging and barking at him, putting threat out, and he's responding, he's thinking he's valid in that response, okay? Or you turn a corner and then you see a dog and you're like, oh crap, and then he's caught off guard as well. So since you can't really plan for it, it's harder to address, but we can still address it, it just takes longer, okay? Class 2, make some tweaks, work on the second half of heel, see you in a week, and then we play everything else by ear, okay? Questions on any of that stuff so far?
I think I saw options online. Is that you have an option coming here, and then do you have one where you come to us and like in his environment, or did I look at that wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have where you can meet us here, we're at Oz Park, where we train outside. I like Oz because it's almost always super busy. Here, people are usually concerned like, well, if I train here, am I going to still get the results that I'm looking for? And the answer is yes. It's just that the number on your e-collar may change because we're inside here versus outside, okay? But it's common sense. So if it's 30 in here, it could be 50 in the neighborhood. And as long as you're willing to adjust the collar, there's no reason why your obedience shouldn't transfer, okay? If you want in your neighborhood or in where you live, as long as you're within the city, you'll see the 2 different rates. That's an option as well. What other clients do is they'll do Oz Park, and then when they need an in-home and they see like how it works, there's just a $50 upcharge. So like a lot of my clients will meet me and only do 1 or 2 classes in the home. So instead of paying a full in-home program, they're saying like, we'll do this, save some money, because we only need you for a couple of classes. I go, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so that's also an option as well. Okay. Other questions?
Do you have anything else?
No.
Oh, I guess the e-collar. So do you guys have those like here? Or is
Correct.
that okay, yeah.
We sell them here.
Okay.
You can also get them on Amazon. I don't care where you get them. It's just because you do get your correct collar.
Yeah.
You do want to be careful with Amazon because the particular model, well, you have 2 options technically, but one of them, I don't know why they did this, but they have 4 different versions of it.
Of course.
So obviously the people at Amazon are going to know this.
Yeah.
So people they're technically sending the right number of the model, but it's the incorrect model. Okay, that just happened to a client that started, I think 2 days ago, Tuesday on Sunday. Yeah. He showed up and I was like, that collar is for a small dog and you have a 80-pound dog. So the 2 models would be the Doctor 2300, which is for 70-pound dogs and under. And then the other model is the 1900S Black Edition, which is the model that has multiple models and is the one that gets confused on Amazon. That one's for 70-pound dogs and over. Okay. The reason why I suggest that one is it's just a few bucks more. I think it's like maybe a $50 to $60 difference, and it's the best collar. Okay.
Even though it's for like tired, like.
Correct. I could put on my 8-pound Chihuahua and he's perfectly fine.
Okay.
All it is the output is greater. Okay. So on the 70-pound and under, his number could be, for example, 60, and on the Black Edition it could be 30, 40, because you get more from less, so to speak. Okay. So the reason why I suggest it when I'm dealing with reactivity cases and stuff is we have to factor in if he's being reactive, he's under stress, he's being defensive, he's moving, he's jumping and lunging, which affects the collar. Okay. So then we may need more output to turn off the behavior. Okay. So, but technically he falls under either of them because he's probably like a 40.
We should just rate him 53.
53-pound dog. Yeah. So because there's like a 20-pound difference, that's why I gave you the 2.
Yeah.
So either one is an option. We've had dogs override collars. It's rare, but it happens. So if it's like you'd rather have I'm all about like have it and not need it. Then need it not have it. Then the Black Edition. Otherwise, technically he falls under the 2300. And from what I'm seeing so far, he's not at a degree where it's like you absolutely need extra power. Okay. Other questions?
So I guess we'll get it, and then I'm assuming would we not use it until we have our first session with you?
Correct.
Okay. And it's a remote, like, Is it like go to your phone or is it like an actual remote? How does that work?
It's a remote that
Okay.
goes to a collar.
Okay.
So it's a handheld remote, there's an on switch, there's a vibration, and then there's Nick and continuous.
Okay.
Nick is a pre-timed stim, meaning if you press the button and hold it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Continuous is for as long as you're holding it down, he's feeling something, and then when you let it go, pressure goes away. Okay, and it stops at about 12 seconds. And then you have to press it again and hold in order for it to kick in again. Okay. So it's not that big, it's probably like, fits in your hand. The remotes, the collar, on the 2300 is more of a box rectangle, whereas on the 1900 Black Edition, it's an art kind of rounded collar, so it's kind of goes against the neck a little bit more smoothly. Other questions?
Do you have anything?
No, that makes sense. Or I guess, so do we have to get one of those leashes?
No.
Okay.
Your leash and your collar is perfectly fine. This just helps me keep them under control a bit more
Yeah.
easily and effectively. But you can see where he's starting to escalate now. Again, whereas before he gave us a good about 10 minutes of like quiet.
Yeah.
And then now he's starting to go back up again.
Yeah.
So like with this behavior, my assumption is it's going to go away simply through the healing exercise. Okay? When a dog gets disciplined, or even with a child, I remember the first time I got spanked, like it just changes things, right? Because it's like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And it's like, all right, don't do that, spank. And it's like, whoa, this can happen. Same thing for the dog. Is that if he's not had consequence, physical consequence, that he respects, we get this.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden when there's something that's of more of concern, he's like, well, do I really want to whine right now?
Yeah.
And
Is the, oh no, I was just agreeing, but is the so obviously the reactivity is like, because it's so hard to walk him right now, like that's first priority.
yes.
But I'm assuming it's all kind of related with like then eventually the goal would be we don't have to worry about him as much. I mean, I'm obviously not throwing him to a room with toddlers right away, but don't have to worry about
the
him
kid
as
stuff and how that works, correct,
yeah.
right? Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
So when it comes to dogs, so nervous dogs and kids, that's not uncommon with the personality type. Because kids are kind of erratic,
Right.
they're loud, they tend to be boisterous, sudden movements, which earlier I was like, that's a nervous dog thing,
Yeah.
right? So let's say we get him to the point where kids can come in and he's not growling, he's just coexisting, but we cannot make him like the kids,
Right.
okay? So then it's like, well, how do we apply this to family, right? How does this work with like we have children? That's actually easier. Okay,
Yeah.
more often than not. Unless the dog has clear, distinct, like, I don't like kids, okay? Because, so in the beginning, like let's say a baby's born, I've had dogs who love kids growl at the baby. And the owner's like, what the hell, like, my dog loves kids, why is my dog growling at my own baby? I go, because it's completely foreign to the dog. You have an infant, you brought home this new energy, so the dog is unsure. Growling doesn't always mean aggression. Growling can also mean like, I don't know what's going on here. So I just tell him it's coexistence. So then the dog gets over that, things are fine, but then baby starts to crawl. Then the dog starts to growl again because now the baby's mobile. Okay, very common, where the dog might even be fine when the baby's first home. And then once the baby becomes mobile, now the dog has an issue. Okay, because now this thing is moving around. Very common. If not then, when the baby's walking. Okay, so what I always tell my clients is for the first, until the baby learns the concept of gentle, there is no interaction.
Yep.
Okay, so then it allows him 2 to 3 years to kind of grow with this child, and then he's like, oh, I've been around you for 2 to 3 years, you're cool. Okay, but people tend to, from the get-go, want to have this kind of like Instagram, baby sleeping on the dog picture, right? And I'm like, that's why kids get fit. Okay,
Yeah.
so. And then I'm always there to help as well. If something happens, like I can give you advice. But in the beginning, it's just coexistence, okay? And then teaching them boundaries. So like I have another client right now, 2 huskies. They have a newborn baby. Everything's fine with the dogs. There's no tension there. But one of the things that I pointed out was, I was like, well, do you guys ever like sit down and you have your baby, and then your dogs just kind of come up to you,
Yeah.
right? And they go, oh yeah, all the time. I'm like, that's where you want to set a boundary, right? And the wife was like, but I like the dogs coming over. I want them to like the baby. I'm like, but you need to understand, if your dog does that right now, they're relating this to your baby's scent. So then when your baby's a toddler walking around, they're going to just go up to them, they're going to knock your baby down.
Yeah. Interesting.
And they're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. I'm like, yes. I'm like, this is why we set boundaries. So then the dogs learn, okay, when we see this or have this scent, we maintain a like 5 to 6 foot distance to be respectful. Like that's perfectly fine and is healthy. And it should be done because when dogs have that right to be in that intimate space, that's where also a bite can happen, right? Because maybe the baby pulled on the ear and fell and the dog's like, ouch, don't do that. That's not aggression, that's a correction, okay? So when it comes to him and children, we should see him be able to coexist with them. If you want to socialize him with children to help him like them, so to speak, I do have an exercise for that. However, that would require him being touched by children. So what do you think we'd want to do?
Muzzle, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So muzzle conditioning, is he muzzle conditioned?
No.
No, we were actually just talking about getting a muzzle, and we're gonna see what you thought about it.
Yes, yes, you want to do that. Okay. If that's a goal of yours, because then if it's like, okay, we're gonna have kids come pet him and associate it with good things like hot dogs and turkey and bologna and cheese and all that stuff, right? To create positive association, we're putting risk. There's a greater risk there, right? So that's where that muzzle comes into play because it allows you to push. If something happens, everybody's okay, everybody's safe, and then you decide, is it really worth it? Do we want to do this? Do we just not care about kids and then only worry about our child in the future? Right? It gives you a lot more options.
I think about like at Christmas, we have a nephew, he'll be like a year and 8 months at Christmas, and we'll all be in his parents' house, and there'll be a newborn baby. And it's gonna be like a lot of us, dogs. I don't want, like, you know, worst case, we put him in the basement, but it would just be great to not like throw them in a room together, but just have him around us. Have my sister-in-law and brother-in-law with their kid, but like we're all hanging out, and we don't have to be stressed like where's Chief, where's the baby.
So the muzzle allows you to also have him in those social interactions and not be that stressed because it's a buffer. Okay, so people look at it and they're like, oh, that's so mean. The dog's muzzle with this and that. I'm like, no, like this is what allows us. So then once you've done that 100 times, you're like, okay, we've not had any issues. He's done great. This has happened. This has happened. He doesn't like when the baby's like, you know, 2 feet of him, but he's fine anywhere outside of that. Like you learn all that information without any real risk. Okay. So the brand that we recommend is Baskerville. It's like basket, but with an R, Baskerville. You can get them on Amazon. You do want to get the Baskerville brand. You don't want to get the Amazon knockoff.
Which is, I think, what we did, and it was,
So, and if you need help with muzzle conditioning, you can email Maria and ask her to send you the training resources link. And on that link, on that page on my website, it's muzzles that we use. You'll see Baskerville on there. You'll see muzzle conditioning videos as well as like the e-collars that we use and prong collars and all that stuff. You can also, if you go to my website and you go to under FAQ, you'll see training resources. Just click on that. Okay. So muzzle conditioning takes time. We use food for that in the beginning. So like cheese, hot dog, turkey, whatever, or even his meals. You want to start that process as soon as possible. Okay. So I always tell people, start it now, because muzzle conditioning is very unpredictable. Some dogs fine within the day, other dogs 3 months later, now they're fine, okay? So you start that process now, so by the time you actually need it during the training, should we need it, you've already done a month of work, 2 months of work, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. Okay? Questions on that?
No, I think we'll do that right away.
Okay.
And then as far as getting started, what is that, like do we go through Maria to get that set up, or how does that all work?
Correct. So Maria handles my calendar. Depending on your schedule dictates, or what your schedule looks like dictates kind of like when we can start and what my schedule looks like. I'll kind of reverse the people. Evenings and weekends are my busiest times because most people are like 9 to 5. Okay. So if you have daytime availability, easier to get you in sooner. Also, if you're trying to do in-home, right? It sounds like you're going to do in-person at Oz and then in-home at Needle.
I think that's fine.
That makes things easier too. Because when people want all in-home, now it's harder because everybody comes to me now. Before COVID, I used to go to everybody. When COVID happened, people were like, don't come over. So then I'm like, all right, well then we'll train at the park. So it's harder for me to do in-homes now, but most of my people travel to me and then like they'll do that 1 or 2 classes that they need in the home, and that's been working out well.
We also have free guest parking for up to 4 hours at our building, so get there, that'll be easy.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I think we'll start with Oz Park because that'll be good with all the stimulation and then go from there.
Yes.
And then, be able to look at like.
Yeah, so I guess when you say classes, I'm just, is it with multiple people or is it just one?
Us.
Okay, that's,
Sessions, yeah.
that's what I figured, I just wanted to make sure.
Correct, it's completely one-on-one.
Okay.
Everything's tailored to what you're needing, okay? So in terms of cost and like length of time, it really comes down to how much you're trying to achieve, okay? We have nervous reactivity on the leash, and then we have his behavior around children, right? Dog park stuff, I mean, in terms of like trying to correct them with behavior, it's simple. If that's something you wanted to cover, then it can be done. But I would at minimum put you
Hey.
put you about 6 classes. The first one, heel. The third one could be on how do we socialize our dog with children. You need muzzle by that point, so we can go in that soon. So, because the first 2 classes are what prime him for everything.
Yep.
Once he's in a better mindset, then we go, now we try to socialize him. There's no point in socializing him when he's like this.
Yeah.
Okay? So the kid thing can be as soon as class 3, okay? And that's pending, like if reactivity is going like I think it will, which I think the reactivity is typically pretty straightforward, because it's don't bark. If we just make it simple, right? Just don't be reactive. I don't care what you do when you see a dog, but just don't be reactive.
Yeah.
Is what makes it simple. So as long as you follow the instructions, that should not be an issue. So by class 3, you can already work on the kid stuff. After that, I'd probably work on stationary control, which is go to your bed and don't move.
Yeah.
So like if people come over
Spot, yeah.
and there's kids, we can confine him, he's under control. We can tell the kids, no, give him a nice 3-foot buffer, right? But he's still in the social space.
Yeah,
Okay? And it gets him exposed. So he doesn't have to be in the midst of the kids, but he can still be nearby and under control.
Yeah, that's all a lot.
Okay?
Do you have any recommendations? I'm just thinking, I mean, you tell me with your schedule, I could definitely, because we obviously want to do it sooner rather than later, so I could definitely like take a couple hours off on a weekday to be able to get in sooner. I'm thinking you probably could too.
I can, yeah,
Well, we'll have to look at it, but
Yeah.
so let's say we could do that for like 1 week. Is there like amount of time between 6 classes? Do you think like it needs to be within 6 weeks, like once a week, or is there?
Ideally, once a week sequentially, unless you're doing longer.
Yeah.
When I have my clients that do longer programs, towards the end, because we build towards off-leash reliability, they need more time. So sometimes they don't see them for a couple months.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, sequential was good. But if you did 1 class and then 2 weeks later, I didn't see you for 2 weeks, that's fine. It's not going to inhibit your progress. It actually gives you more opportunity to like make mistakes and like learn what's working, what's not working. So yeah, like, that's completely fine.
Because I'm just thinking if we could like set up 2, so if we could get in sooner and like have a day where we just take off some time from work, so it's, you know, we get in sooner with you.
I would have to do afternoons at some point.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah, like we always, I'm an attorney, so mornings I have a lot of court calls, but.
I'm just saying during the, I think it's just as long as it's during the day, it's not like a night time.
Yeah, and it just wondering how your schedule works, just because mine, you know, can change depending on the week. Is it like, well, Tuesday works, Tuesday afternoon works this week? Is it a big deal if it's like Wednesday the next week, or do you like to keep like a consistent?
Right, so if you have like a rotating schedule, so to speak, right, is we can accommodate it, I just may not see you sequentially.
Yeah.
Right, so most of our clients are, you know, Friday at 5 o'clock for 6 weeks, so on and so forth. But every now and then we get someone like a nurse or a doctor or an attorney that has a rotating schedule. So then we'll tell them, just give us your schedule, and Maria cross-references them and goes, okay, he can see you here, he can see you here, but then there might be a week or 2 where we don't work out in terms of scheduling.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect your progress, it just gives you more time to train.
Totally.
Okay? With the way that because people always get concerned about that, like I've had people that would travel Monday through Friday, be home Friday evening through Sunday, and then leave like Monday morning.
Right.
And I told them, as long as when you're with your dog, you're consistent. Because your dog doesn't think like, oh, you're only training me 3 days of the week. Your dog's like, every time we work together, it's always the same. Regardless that you're only here 2.5 days out the week. That's what dogs go by.
Interesting.
Okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, it won't have any impact on your training as long as you're doing the homework. Okay? Other questions?
I think that's it. So basically we'll just talk to Maria and see how soon we can get in. I think we'll, again, try to do the sooner one. We'll probably do it like during the day.
And I guess with the what's it called?
Muzzle.
Muzzle training, would you recommend like, well, maybe give it 2 weeks because you're going to start muzzle training?
No, I think you have
Right,
to.
that's
Right,
right,
right.
too, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, like muzzle training can be very easy or it can be difficult.
Yeah.
So if you get in right away and it's like we're ready for class 3 and it's like crap, he still doesn't like the muzzle, that's where there can be a bit of like
Makes sense,
awkwardness. So it could either be if you got in right away, we could always save a class. Like let's say you do your program, you do the leash, we do the heel, we do this, the stationary control, we do recall or whatever, you have your one class meant for socialization with children. And then you book it once he's muzzle trained.
That makes sense, yeah.
Like that's another option too. So yeah, I mean, we're pretty flexible. We just tell people like, you know, we understand last minute stuff happens, but we try not to do that because sometimes I had this past Sunday, it was a weird Sunday. My first 3 just canceled day of. And then something happened with my last client as well. I'm like, man, it's like a terrible Sunday. But like it's a waste of my day because I couldn't plan around it. And I was on my way to Oz and Maria called me up like, hey, Jen canceled. I'm like, great, I just spent 30 minutes in the car.
Right.
And I could have been doing work here, you know? So, but yeah, so Maria would handle all that stuff. I just learned not to talk about my calendar. Just
Yeah, very fair.
No, I just was wondering generally how, you know.
Yeah, if you have a schedule like that, it changes, you know, as long as we can plan ahead, shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
So at minimum, I would do 6 classes.
Yeah.
2 on heel, 1 on the child, socialization, 1 on stationary control, which leaves us 2, which will most likely be like recall, which is come when called. Okay, so this way, if he's playing with dogs or if he's off the leash running around enjoying himself, we have a means of returning him to us. Okay. If you did 9 or 12 classes, all that means is we can teach more things, unless there are more behaviors to address.
Yeah.
Okay. So unless you're wanting a more like off-leash level trained dog, you're pretty much fine with 6. Because I look at it as this is what you need, this is his issues, this is what you want, and then like this is what I know I can get done within this period of time. And if you want more, you can always book for more. Otherwise, 6 is the bare minimum for what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense. Basically, start with 6 and then see.
Yeah, and then it's like go from there.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
For Maria to get back to you, if you want to make things easier, you can walk out, turn around, Maria, put us down for 6, and here's our calendar. Okay, and then for the booking, there's like a 5 to 7 day turnaround, right? And it's the same for coming back into the calendar because since you guys have booked, other people that book their consultations, then we got new clients that were onboarding from prior, then my current clients. So it's another little bit of a wait. But having that information already, when she opens that email, she goes, okay, cool, this eliminates the step of me emailing you and then waiting for you to respond, and then that back and forth.
Basically, just we want to do 6 and then later on at the apartment, but we'll figure that out later.
Correct.
And then here are dates that were available.
Correct.
Great.
And then once she gets to you, she'll respond to you and then most likely have some times for you. She'll send you a form, a contract form. And then she'll send you the make and model of the collar that you'll need, so you can either get it through us or through Amazon. Again, I don't care where.
Yeah.
Just double check that you do get the correct collar. It should say, if you get the black edition, it will say black edition. Okay. And it's a fully black remote. Biggest giveaway is the remote that they've been sending is a black and tan remote. Okay. So right away when I saw that guy show up, I'm like, that's the wrong collar. And he's like, I paid $330 for it. I'm like, well, that collar's actually cheaper, but they sent you the wrong one. You know, so he's got to turn around and exchange it now. Okay.
And so she'll give us that information in the email.
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah. All that will be provided to you. Other questions?
Maybe weird, but with the camera, do you like review that afterwards and like send us like pointers, like here's what you were doing wrong? I'm just wondering.
It's mainly for you guys.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean, do you send like the sessions afterwards? Like, do you send
If you just go to our YouTube, so have you seen our videos?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so you go to my YouTube, my website. Any video you click my website should take you to my YouTube. You go to my YouTube, and then you can look up playlists. And if you would like to see how does e-collar work, feel free to watch any video there is.
Awesome,
okay. We're very transparent about how we do this. So lesson ones are great to watch because no one knows what they're doing. Okay, they're uncut, so you'll see the full session. We don't hide anything, and you go, oh wow, like that was actually cool. The dog went from this crazy anxious mess to this calm, passive dog by the end of class, and then you see him at the beginning of class 2, and you're like, holy crap, like that dog's so much better. And you like see the progress.
Cool.
So it helps people see that what we do works because it's the same thing I would do for you. I would be present with you, I would coach you through it, You would do your work, I'd give you your homework, you'd go off, and then I see you the following week, okay? So I don't even need to touch the dog. So why I love... I don't know about lights. Just how effective the remote collar is when done correctly. One of the most common questions I do get is, when does the e-collar go away? Okay, when you need it, it doesn't. So that means you're gonna go for a walk, if you're gonna go to a party, there's gonna be a lot of kids, you need it. But if it's a great dog in the house, you don't need it, okay?
They would just go with his collar, like we'd still put his leash on that collar, and also have the e-collar. Yep.
Correct. The reason why this is what's called opportunistic behavior, okay? You guys drive?
Yeah.
You go on the expressway? Do you go the speed limit? Nope. Right. Most people don't. You see a squad car, what happens?
Yeah, slow down.
That's opportunistic behavior. You know, if you don't see a squad car, if there's no camera, you're gonna get away with it. That's Henry.
That's true, yeah.
Henry has a bark collar.
Oh,
and
sure.
the minute
The
it's
minute it's
off.
off. He doesn't even do anything with it, it's just, yeah.
Yes. So if there's things that need to be corrected, like within the home, I can give you means of correcting without the e-collar. But when you're outside, you can't control your environment, and if there's gonna be kids around and all that stuff, the e-collar gives you, without a doubt, the most control.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's not that you're always using it. It's just that it's present, and its presence keeps him in check. Just like cops on the expressway keep people going the speed limit.
I'm sure this is a dumb question, but I'm curious. I think this is one of the things, like when we were first looking at training videos when we first got him, like, is there any concern of, like, let's say I'm walking down the street and there's a kid and he starts to do something, so I kind of like zap him or
That
whatever.
pushes the behavior.
Yeah, does it make it like associating the kid with that? Yeah, they're not
Yes
smart
and
enough for
no.
that.
That's a good question. Yes and no. So that's why we have to repeat things.
Yeah.
So let's say we have a dog that's reactive to other dogs, and we have to correct the behavior. Kind of like, so to speak, spanking him for barking at the dog through the e-collar. Is because he's not able to, for me, like if I talk back to my mom and I got spanked, she's like, that's what you get for talking back to me, right? Or if I did something at school and I came home to a spanking, I can relate, it's because of what I did at school. Dogs can't. So the way he learns is, he lunges and barks at a dog, you correct him if needed. He goes, okay, that sucked. And then the next time he sees a dog, he moves away from it because he's thinking, is it the dog or why was I corrected, right? But eventually he sees 100 dogs and he goes, hey, I just realized that if I don't bark at the dog, nothing happens. And if the dog just passes by, nothing happens. But if I lunge and bark at them, e-collar goes off. So that's how he ties that the collar is towards his behavior, not towards the dog. Okay? But that's why we have to repeat things. So like if we did socialization with a child and he growled, we would have to correct that. But then we have to repeat it. Okay? Because there would be some, a little bit of like, is it the kid or is it me?
Yep.
And then by repeating, he goes, oh, it's not me. I mean, it's not the kid, it's me.
Yeah.
Okay?
Then he sees yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
And then just curious what you would say is just because the common criticism I saw of these training methods are you're just making the dog like docile, and then those are the dogs that then go crazy.
No.
So like, I just wonder.
Yeah, no, I hear it all the time. You're suppressing the behavior, and then one day the dog's gonna just let it all out, right? That's like more of a human thing, where we just bottle things up, right? So there has to be an answer, is the thing. So like, let's say he's being reactive to a dog. I don't need him to like the dog. I just need him not to lunge and bark at the dog. So most trainers go, when your dog sees another dog, do this, right? Make them look at you.
Yeah.
That is a very specific, 1 out of 1,000 things in the environment thing to do for the dog, okay? And I go, let's make it easier. How about you don't do the one thing of lunging and barking, and look at all these 999 other things that are in the environment.
Yeah.
That's much easier, okay? So then he learns, oh, if I don't like that dog, I don't have to lunge at them, right? But I can look at the tree, I can look at mom, I look at the squirrel, I can look at the ground, right? I can look at anything else in order to deal with the fact that I don't like looking at this dog walking past me. Okay, so it's called avoidance behavior. You ever go to a store and you see someone you don't want to talk to and you go down a different aisle?
Yeah.
That's avoidance behavior, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
Right, but what a dog does is they go and yell at that person, right? That's reactivity. We don't do that, we do avoidance.
Yeah.
So in order to stop any kind of aggressive or defensive response, we have to see avoidance first, and then we see where does the dog take it. So he might get to the point where he'll see a dog and he just won't care anymore, okay? But that's because he's learned that barking and lunging is not an option and that there are other options, okay? So that's where a lot of that comes from. Is one, it's also just they're like the deterrent of like, don't use these tools. But then if like they were so bad, then why am I around?
Yeah.
You know, other questions?
It's everything. It's really helpful.
No,
Yeah.
And
Excited to get started.
Yeah, and on my YouTube channel, there's one called Client Highlights and like dog training clips. There's like a bunch of like condensed videos. Those are really good to watch because you see like it's more like straightforward and to the point, and you'll just see the progress of like certain dogs, and you go about like that's awesome. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think it's good. It seems like he's not, I mean, it's actually really funny timing. Right before we came here, we got a very mean note from our building management. I have a lot of issues with it for other reasons, but because I'm so careful, I mean, no incidents at all, like I'm so careful. I've got him like a very short leash, but you know, the picture walking through a building lobby, stimulation everywhere.
Well, and the building manager has one of those really tiny dogs.
Oh, sure.
That she lets just be around.
And that barks incessantly at Chief, and then she thinks he's a bad dog because Chief barks back.
Yeah.
Chief is 55 pounds and scary bark instead of.
Well, so now they are now requesting, we have like a back door to an alley, and we live in the loop, and the alley is just not great. And they're now, as of tomorrow, requesting that I not take him through the lobby anymore. I have to go into this back alley and walk him out. So this just happened, and I'm just very frustrated. Now we're kind of figuring out how to deal with it, because it's like, there's a lot that goes on in that alley. It's not necessarily safe for me to be back there.
Sure.
So we're figuring out like,
That's
do we get a muzzle, and then we tell them, because
because
they're saying to us like, he's gonna bite someone. I'm like, well, he's never gotten close to it. I'm very on top of it. We're doing training. But if we're trying to have the muzzle be like the.
He doesn't have to wear the muzzle all the time. He's only gonna wear it when he's gonna need it.
Well, it would just be this, but like, I don't know. I don't think we'll get back to them right away. I'll do the alley a little bit, but you know, when it starts getting dark at 5 o'clock, I'm not walking in that alley. So we kind of want to be like.
we want to be
Okay.
At a muzzle, yeah.
What I would do is, we'll start the training. The hard part is closed in environments.
Yeah.
Okay. But we'll get through it.
Yeah.
And then, you just gotta know, like, we hired a professional and we work with them, and his assessment is we don't have an aggressive dog.
Yeah.
And then he's helping us with it, and we've seen progress. We would like to use the lobby like everybody else, and then see what happens.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be the first client who I've had who's been in the similar
I was hoping
situation.
this wasn't like crazy.
No.
You freak out when I'm.
There were some other things about the way she worded it. I had issues with it. I had nothing to do with them.
Yeah, I guess mine could just whatever. So it's not too terrible, but it does seem like there's some drug deals that go on back there. And Chief is, I would say, likes you more than me. So I'd only be concerned if Chief
Well, no, there's some.
getting it, if someone were to approach, it's
That's
scary
it.
person
Someone
approaching.
could easily approach me, and I mean, in a way, like, do we want him
Do
to talk
we
to me?
want
He would
What
still
else?
react. He should still react.
He would still react, and that, but
And you
But
just
we-
would not provide consequence.
Okay,
If
so
you're in
that-
training, you would let that go, for sure.
yeah.
Right? Because we can always stop it again.
Yeah.
Right? So, because that's his concern sometimes for clients is like, well, I don't want to kill my security.
Yeah.
And it's different when it's passing by a person, and like a construction worker moving stuff, versus someone like walking directly towards you in a threatening fashion. Like, he's gonna think like, well, we've never done this before.
Yeah.
And then he should still react.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then obviously, like, I get so nervous about, I don't even know what the laws are about, like, if I think he gets one bite or two, and all that kind of
It's a lot
stuff.
harder than people think it is.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
And if it was,
I've seen,
if it was a
I'm an
protection.
attorney, I mean, it's.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I'm a criminal defense attorney, every dog gets one, essentially.
But I mean, anyway, because if it was a protection thing, that obviously wouldn't count. Like, that's fine.
So, as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, as long as your dog is on a leash, if something happens, technically you're not liable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Like if someone came up to you into your personal space and he bit them, right?
But even if it's on a leash and he passes it by someone, then a lot of times people will just get muzzle orders if it happens a few
Yeah, I
times.
guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Or then you can't leave the house without him on a muzzle.
Yeah.
We had, because I had a dog that I trained in the South who lived by Roseville, Michigan,
Uh-huh.
Indiana. And you might see him as an Irish setter. He's always off leash running around Grand Park. His name's Keenan. And he was attacked.
He's very impressive.
So they give a lot of freedoms.
Yeah.
But yes, I trained Keenan many years ago. But he was attacked by an off-leash kind of corso. And, you know, they actually sent the guy to me who did contact me but never did anything. And then, like, his dog attacked another dog.
Oh, wow.
And then everybody was like, hey, and they had to, like, go to the alderman, like,
Yeah.
call the authorities. And it was, like, a couple of months of, like, them pursuing
It's
before
like
they
an
even-
off-leash dog running around.
Yeah, well, first of all, his dog broke off leash
Uh-huh.
and attacked Keenan across Michigan, right there by that hotel,
Oh, yeah.
right, that used to be there before
Yeah.
they rebuilt it. So he got attacked by that kind of corso right there. And if nothing happened, they just said, we got a guy that can help you, please get your dog trained. But then his dog attacked another dog, and then people saw him leaving the dog off leash, and they're like, this dog is dangerous. But like, they kept calling the authorities, animal care control, the city of Chicago. And it was like a huge process before finally they could actually get him to do something about his dog.
Yeah.
So that's been at least my experience with it, and I've seen it happen a couple other times as well, where people are really paranoid about like, oh, like, what happens? And I'm like, the times that I've seen, it's been like a process.
If there's something to worry about, I'll worry about it, so.
Yeah, from what I'm seeing so far, I don't think there is.
Yeah.
You're taking the right steps in approaching this. The main thing would be you start the program and you don't do the training.
Yeah.
Like follow through.
Right.
Okay, that's where I can't help you. If you don't do homework, I can't help you.
Right.
Okay. But otherwise, if you need a letter from me, more than happy to provide it. I've done it before for clients, not an issue.
Thanks, if we get there, I will let you know.
Okay.
I'm probably just gonna use the alley and just ignore it,
Yeah.
should try not to respond.
So as far as how he's been today, like, so we're gonna let him go, or, when this wraps up and whenever, he's been so whiny, do we just kind of,
Let it go for now.
don't punish, don't.
Yeah, just let it go.
Yeah.
Because once we start it, it's going to be a big difference. Trust me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is a subtle aversive. It's
Yeah.
not nothing like the e-talk. Okay?
Yeah.
No, I figured, I just wasn't sure if you were like, by the way, don't encourage him after this.
But don't pet him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, when I bring him to you, don't praise him or anything like
Yeah.
that. Don't try to comfort him.
When we get home tonight, though, like when we get home, it's
If he
okay,
wants
like
to,
let him
like-
sit on the couch with us and.
Do your normal life thing.
Okay.
But if you're in a situation like this where he's being anxious and we don't want to try to console him, we want to let him handle it, and if anything, just provide some kind of structure and just let him deal with it, okay?
Cool.
Once you start the remote training, it's going to be a big difference. Okay?
Cool.
Anything else?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for your time. This was
is
incredibly
awesome.
helpful.
Yeah.
And very good timing.
And you can switch it to your leash there. Yeah, and like I said, feel free to refer to our videos.